Good evening, everybody. It is the November 1st Planning Commission. My name is Travis Ney. Up here this evening, we have Scott Woodbury, Maren Patterson, Phil Markham. We have Lisa Milkevich, Sue Wilson, Ned Hacker. And then from staff, we've got Zach Smallwood and Jared Hall, and then Bryant Farnsworth from the legal office. A little bit of housekeeping right up front. If you have cell phones, we ask that you please silence your cell phone. If you need to take phone calls, we ask that you take them out in the other room. If you're here to speak to an issue tonight, when it's time for that issue and we open it up for public comment, we just ask if you wish to speak that you state your name and address for the record. We'll give you 3 minutes to speak. If you're speaking for a group of people, we'll give you 5 minutes. We have a few things we need to get through up here first, and then we'll get into the formal agenda. So item number 1 on the agenda this evening is approval of the minutes from the October 18, 2018 meeting. Has everybody had an opportunity to review those minutes?
Yes.
Yep.
Any changes or corrections other than the minor wording in the pre-meeting?
No.
No. I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes from the Thursday, October 18th, 2018 Planning and Zoning meeting.
A motion by Mr. Woodbury. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
A second by Mr. Hacker. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Item number 2, conflicts of interest. Does anybody have any conflicts of interest with an item on the agenda this evening?
No.
No.
That's a no for me as well. Okay. Item number 3 is approval of the finding of fact from the October 18, 2018 meeting. We have 3 findings of fact. Number 1 is Enlow, a conditional use for an accessory dwelling unit at the property address 266 West Noah Circle. The next is Q&A Auto Cells, seeking a conditional use for an auto sales business at the property address 4195 South, 500 West, units number 75, 76, 79, and 80. And then the final one is Cyril, seeking a conditional use for an accessory dwelling unit at the property address 4689 South Castlefield Lane. Has everybody had an opportunity to review those 3?
Yes.
And any corrections? Entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the findings of fact for the Enlow accessory dwelling unit, the CUP for that, the conditional use permit for Q&A auto sales, and also the conditional use permit for the Cyril accessory dwelling
I have a
unit.
motion by Mr. Markham. Do I have a second?
Second that motion.
A second by Mrs. Milkevich, sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion carries. Item number 4 on the formal agenda this evening is Salt Lake Auto Sales, seeking a conditional use for vehicle sales at the property address 4651 South, 500 West, unit number 11. Is that applicant here this evening? We'll have you up in just a few moments. Mr. Smallwood.
Good evening, guys. So this is an application for a conditional use for auto sales. It's located just off of 5th West and south of 45th South, kind of across the street from the Public Services building. You guys have heard AFG Auto. That was here at your last meeting. It's in the same building. It's directly next door to that. It's in the MG zone. Here you can see it's kind of highlighted in yellow where it is located. And, you know, like normal, I can't, look, it works. That's AFG next door. It's largely just warehouse space where he conducts his repair work on his own vehicles, of which he then sells, which we are requiring all sales to be, or all for sale vehicles to be within the warehouse space. Here you can see the just a few photos of the area. I'll zoom in specifically to here because it was an item that was brought up last time. That is the pedestrian fence that you guys had commented on and put a condition that be closed off. So I wanted to make sure you guys were aware of that. And with those, we do recommend approval subject to the 9 conditions in front of you. Any questions for staff?
Questions for staff? I just have one, if nobody else does.
Sure.
So this is the second of 3 applications we've heard for this piece of property, and in
Correct.
all of them we've discussed that there aren't adequate handicap parking spaces, and that we've said that we need a van accessible space. I haven't seen the van accessible space really addressed in any one of the 3 applications. Do we know where we're at with that, or what the thoughts are behind that?
That is probably a mistake on my end. There should be a van accessible space. I thought I had addressed it in one of them.
I think in this one you say that it shall be on the property. but
And so I don't.
Condition number 5 says shall provide one
Okay, so
ADA van accessible parking stall.
Okay, so with that wording, we're giving the property owner a little bit of flexibility because this is for one entire building, and so we're giving them the accessibility to place those ADA spots where it's most convenient for the property owner, because there is some customer-facing uses in that complex, so it makes kind of more sense to stripe one there. Other than that, we're allowing them the flexibility to do that.
okay, so in the report where you say that you just need an ADA space, but you're not suggesting the van accessible, but now it doesn't really matter. As long as it's on the property and you think
Exactly.
this is the best one to do.
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, but with that, that's a condition tied into this applicant specifically. So I know we said we just need one for the whole property, but these guys will not have satisfied that requirement unless the
Unless
van
they-
spot's on there, correct? Is that-
Right, exactly. So total for the entire property needs 3.
Needs 3. Okay, and
So
how many do
each
they have there?
They don't have any striped.
Okay.
They do have little placards on the wall, but that doesn't suffice. We need it to be striped, so we'll have to have those 3 stripes. And so with these 3 applications, we're getting all 3 ADA spots.
Okay, so we're just doing one per application. Okay.
Correct.
That's fine.
Thanks. All right, if we could have the applicant come up. We'll just have you state your name and address for the record, please. Right over to the microphone. Good evening.
Good evening. The Noon Gravi. And what else did you need?
Your address, please.
Address is 4651 South, 500 West, number 11.
All right, have you had an opportunity to review the 9 conditions?
I didn't. My partner did. I didn't. He couldn't make it.
Will you be able to comply with the 9 conditions?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Do you have anything that you'd like to add to the presentation?
No thanks.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant?
Nope.
All right, you can take a seat.
Thank
you. We'll open this up for public comment. If anyone would like to speak to this issue, come on up. And seeing none, we'll close the public comment and bring it back up here for discussion or a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the conditional use permit to allow an auto sales business at the property address 4651 South, 500 West, unit number 11, subject to the 9 conditions.
All right, I have a motion by Ms. Patterson to approve a conditional use permit to allow auto sale business at the property address 4651 South, 500 West, unit number 11, subject to conditions 1 through 9. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Mr. Woodbury. All right, call for a vote, please.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, motion carries. Good luck with your business. All right, item number 5 this evening is the Meraki Institute seeking a conditional use for tattoo parlor and permanent cosmetic business at the property address 6526 South State Street, suite number 402. Is that applicant here this evening? We'll have you up in just a moment. Mr. Hall.
Thank you. So just to give you a little background about the property itself, this is west of State Street. You can see in this overhead the several properties here. These are all connected by the access and parking. The building where Unit 402, where the Meraki Institute will be, is located in this, that unit's located in the second building. The property owner owns both of these 2 buildings. That's a separate property owner from the others, but he does own both of these buildings. Just west of State Street, so that people know where we're talking about, this is the Supersonic Car Wash, and you're looking at the parking lot of the Sam's Club. CD zoning, so it does allow for this type of use. The Meraki Institute is microblading, where they work on your eyebrows, inserting fibers to match your eyebrows and make your eyebrows fuller and more attractive. I've talked about that longer than I'm comfortable with. And then there's some permanent makeup tattoo work that gets done as well. So with that tattooing aspect of it, we've asked for the conditional use permit. So we look at these kinds of situations for parking. That's our main concern with these types of uses going into existing buildings. So the parking is what it is. We have the amount of parking. There's nowhere really to add any. There's some shared parking ability in the area. You can see 402, the unit listed shown here. There's a couple of other units in the building. We actually have on the agenda tonight Unit 403 right next door to them. So I'll just bring that out now so it makes sense that we're seeing the same sort of overheads again and again here. But all of the access is provided from State Street. So they're fairly deep back in here. There are 25 parking stalls throughout these 2 different buildings. The owner has indicated he can reserve about 4 stalls for Meraki Institute to use, and that's in addition to all the other stalls that are shared parking. I've been back there a couple of times while we've been looking at the application, just to kind of get an idea how much parking there is. There does appear to be a lot of parking available most of the time. They're asking to have 3 booths, 3 stations. We actually do our parking based on numbers of booths and stations, because with beauty parlors, that's how we do it, 3 parking stalls per station. This is not a beauty parlor. It doesn't generate that kind of traffic. My understanding from speaking with the applicants is we've conditioned 3 stalls, or I'm sorry, 3 stations as a condition of approval. They might have 4, but only 2 workers, but you have a bed to have somebody in, or if you have to leave a station before it's sanitized again, that kind of thing, so we can keep people coming. I'm not uncomfortable with that in terms of staff. We're talking about 2 employees. That works for us. It shouldn't generate a parking problem. You saw attached to your reports the letters from several other tenants and property owners in the area that don't have concerns about this kind of use, for both uses actually, for this application and Koi Dragon Tattoo as well, that's coming up here on the agenda. With that, I just want to show you the floor plan provided. It is about a 760 square foot unit. The only real change that the applicants are asking to make is to add a sink on the outside of the bathroom wall there for ease of access to it. Other than that, everything is just being remodeled interior. Just cosmetically, I did get a shot of the interior of the unit. You're looking at that on the right there. Parking on the left, you can see the 2 units here. This is Meraki Institute, and then Koi Dragon Tattoo would be there. There is actually, just show you this real quickly. The space here is required for buffering. There's a wall back here and a buffer landscaping area, because we do have this area of residential zoning back here, Malmstrom Court. Things like that, but it looks like it's buffered appropriately for our zoning, so we're not asking for changes to that. Staff is recommending approval subject to those 8 conditions, with the understanding that there might be a 4th booth that we're not concerned about at this point. Do you have any questions for staff?
Questions for staff? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
If we could have someone from the applicant come on up. Good evening.
Good evening.
You just state your name and address, please.
Yes, Giovanna Lee Tomas. Our address is going to be 6526 South State Street, and the unit is 402.
All right. Have you had an opportunity to review the 8 conditions?
Yes.
You'll be able to comply with those 8 conditions?
Absolutely.
Is there anything that you would like to add to the presentation?
On the 3rd condition, is it okay if that is changed to 4?
Staff doesn't seem to have a concern with that.
Okay. Perfect.
Did Mr. Hall describe microblading in a way that was adequate?
Yes, perfect.
Okay.
Is that from experience?
All right. Any additional questions for the applicants?
Legitimate questions, right?
Yeah. No. All right. Take a seat.
Thank you.
All right. We will open this up for public comment if anyone would like to speak to this issue. Please.
My name's Brandon Farley, 3759 Pear-Apple Circle, West Valley, Utah, 84119. I'm the property owner of both of those properties. I just wanted to clarify a couple things. The first thing would be there was a concern on 3 for the screening appropriately of the gate for the trash. I wanted to inform everybody we've attempted to have a couple contractors out there. We're just having troubles getting someone to put the gate in. We actually have everything that we need. We just need to get the contractor to do that. Someone hit the gate and damaged it. Also, I wanted to let you guys know, not only do I own the property, but I run the business out of Unit 300, and we do take out, we have the first unit, 401. I'm running office and use it just as a lunchroom and overflow. So I wanted to assure you that, you know, parking is a concern on our side. If I felt like there was anything that would cause problems, it would not only affect, you know, my neighbors, but my own personal business as well.
Sure.
So I have invested interest in that. So
Great.
thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, seeing done, we'll close public comment and bring it back up here for discussion or motion.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we approve a conditional use permit allowing a microblading and permanent makeup shop on the property located at 6526 South State Street, Unit 402, subject to the 8 conditions.
All right,
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second, first by Ms. Milkevich and a second by Mr.
Sorry, do we need to change number 3 to say no more than 4 booths?
Thank you.
We do need to amend.
Oh, I missed that. So can we amend the
Go ahead,
motion?
amend it.
Can we amend our motion to amend item number 3 in the conditions for 4 booths?
Yes, and my second will still stand.
Okay. So I have a motion by Mrs. Milkovich and a second by Mr. Markham to approve a conditional use permit for microblading and permanent makeup tattoo shop on the property address 6526 South State Street, Unit 402, subject to conditions 1 through 8 with the amendment to condition number 3 reading four booths or stations. Call for a vote.
Ms. Milkovich?
Yes.
Mr. Markham?
Yes.
Ms. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Woodbury?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Hacker?
Yes.
Mr. Nate?
Yes, motion carries. Good luck with your business.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
can we just comment that it's very nice that the property owner came tonight?
All right. Item number 6 this evening is Koi Dragon Tattoos, seeking a conditional use for a tattoo parlor business at the property address 6526 South State Street, unit number 403. Is that applicant here this evening? Okay, we'll have you up in just a moment. Mr. Hall.
Okay, thank you. This is, as I mentioned in the previous presentation, this is Koi Dragon Tattoos. Tattoos are a conditional use permit in this zone. Unit 403 is located directly to the west of Unit 402 that we just discussed in the CD zone. This is, it's slightly off. It should be just positioned a little bit further west to show you accurately where Unit 403 is. Nonetheless, you can kind of see that there. This is a slightly smaller unit just because some of the unit is actually used as storage by the property owner. So only about 427 square feet of it, or I'm sorry, about 576 square feet of the unit itself will be used for the tattoo shop. It's fairly small. These aren't large units anyway. As we mentioned, and as was mentioned in the work session that we had, the applicant initially drew in 3 booths. He's working alone at this point, but would like to add more employees. We're limiting this because of the size of the unit and the parking that is available to no more than 2 booths. It's slightly different than the previous application. It's all tattooing, not that other component. So we're asking for just a condition of 2 booths. Again, understanding that he's working alone right now, but as he is able to add people, we'd like to add no more than 1 more or 2 people sharing a booth, that kind of thing. The parking, again, is right out front. Mr. Farley has indicated that he can reserve 3 parking stalls for Koi Dragon Tattoos, as well as the shared parking that's there available. We're comfortable with that as staff, as long as we're at the 2 booths between the 2 different properties going in there, the 2 different businesses. We are recommending approval. Again, the same conditions. It has to do with the gate that Mr. Farley mentioned, things like that. But the landscaping's in good shape. The buffer's appropriate. So we're just recommending these 7 conditions. I should probably state for the record so people understand there are health permits that have to be gotten for tattooing. We'll require them to show those to us at business licensing and to meet these conditions of approval. We don't actually regulate them. The state and county health departments do. So, any questions for staff about Koi Dragon Tattoos?
Questions for Mr. Hall? No? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, if we could have the applicant come up. Good evening.
Hi, my name is Juan Barrera, and the address is 6526 South State, number 403.
Okay. Have you had an opportunity to review the 7 conditions?
I have, yeah.
And you'll be able to comply with those 7 conditions?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have anything that you'd like to add to the presentation?
Currently, no.
Okay. Perfect. Any questions for the applicant? No. Oh, all right. Have a seat.
All right.
Okay. We'll open this one up for public comment if anyone would like to speak to this issue.
So just as I discussed earlier, parking and the gates all going to be fixed.
Will you throw in your name and address again one
sorry.
more time? Sorry.
My name is Brandon Farley, 3759 Pear Apple Circle, West Valley, Utah, 84119. I also wanted to state that, I understand people with tattooing are concerns, or might have concerns with that. I have personally met Juan, and his whole family actually came by for the application process. So I met his wife and 2 kids. We've had multiple applications for these units, and I did take into strong considerations to make sure that we have an appropriate renter or tenants for our environment and our work environment around there. So thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, we'll close public comment and bring it back up here for discussion or motion.
Before a motion is made, I do want to compliment the property owner. I've used this property for many, many years. In fact, there was a dog groomer in these 2 stalls for, probably the last 15 years at least. And the property has always been well maintained and kept up. And we appreciate that in Murray. It's nice to approve things at properties that are maintained.
Thank you very much. Take pride in it.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make motion that we approve a conditional use permit allowing a tattoo shop on the property located at 6526 South State Street, unit number 403, subject to the 7 conditional.
All right, I have a motion.
Conditions.
I have a motion by Mr. Hacker to approve a conditional use permit allowing a tattoo shop on the property address 6526 South State Street, unit number 403, subject to conditions 1 through 7.
I'll second.
I have a second by Mr. Markham. Call for vote.
Mr. Hacker?
Yes.
Mr. Markham?
Yes.
Ms. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Woodbury?
Yes.
David?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Nay?
Yes, motion carries. Good luck with your business. All right, item number 7 this evening is Jones. They're seeking a conditional use for an accessory dwelling unit at the property address 6611 South Alfred Way. Is that applicant here this evening? We'll have you up in just a few moments. Mr. Hall.
I promise to sit down for a while after this one.
Okay.
It's all Zach for a while after this. So Daniel and Nicolea Jones are applying for a conditional use permit to allow them to do an accessory dwelling unit, 6611 South Alfred Way. You can see the property here in back of Alfred, or in back of Daniel Court, sorry, just at the south end of the city. It's an R18 zone. As you're aware, all the single-family zones of the city do allow for accessory dwelling units if we can meet certain conditions and show those conditions to be met. Just to go over a couple of those as we go through some photos of the and floor plans of the unit. You can see the driveway here. One of our conditions is that we need to be able to provide parking for 2 additional cars beyond what we would normally see at a house. There's plenty of parking here. This parking actually extends in back of that gate as well. You're looking at the back side of the gate here. There's additional parking, and then that takes you to the outside entrance. We don't allow outside entrances to be on the front or the corner sides, so this is in the rear. It's appropriate. Nice for those units to have second entrances. That entrance takes you straight into the kitchen. So on this floor plan, you can see the entrance to the kitchen here. You're looking at that stairwell if it were drawn on the outside there. Takes you straight into the kitchen. The property is multiple floors. They're not full stories, so you're on different, kind of like, think of this as the lowest floor. On the lowest floor, you have the kitchen for the accessory dwelling unit, and then some areas that are not used as part of the dwelling unit, not inhabited and not used. This takes you to the next level right there. That hallway takes you up to the units in the accessory dwelling unit, and the bedroom and the bathroom and the living room. From here you can go up into the main dwelling unit as well, but this is the accessory dwelling unit. The accessory dwelling unit accounts for about 619 square feet of the total. That's less than the main. We allow 40% of the unit to be the accessory dwelling unit as long as it's not more than 40% of the floor area. This is just about 34% of the dwelling. This is a photo of the Mark Boren that worked on this report for us. Got some photographs inside. You have a photo of the kitchen that we talked about walking straight into from that walkout basement, the bedroom, living room. Again, it's meeting those requirements. There is some work being done, or that'll need to be done for the unit, not in terms of remodeling everything or moving walls around, but the smoke detectors need to be hardwired together. I understand there's a panel that they have to have access to the breaker panel in case they need access to that. It's outside, so that's accessible, so that's meeting requirements. But there's some other things that are contained in our conditions that come from the building official for them to meet. Separate source of heat, they're working on that. They'll have to meet those conditions. One of the big conditions that we like to talk about, and I'll just show you quickly, this is the floor plan that they provided of the rest of the unit, the main dwelling. One of the conditions we talk about a lot is the property owner's affidavit. So the Joneses live in the home. They recently purchased it. They plan to live in the home, and they'll file that affidavit with the county. So that means that if they're going to use that accessory dwelling unit as a rental unit, they'll do two things beyond the other things we just talked about. They will file an affidavit with the county recorder's office that states that they will live in this home as their primary dwelling. That's important to us because it means that things get taken care of if there are issues, and that if there are problems with renters in that unit, the neighbors know who to talk to because the owner's right there. You don't get that, well, they live in California or something like that. They're here. It has to be that way for always. If that accessory dwelling unit gets used, somebody lives in that property that owns the property. The other part of it is just gone because I was talking about the property owner's affidavit.
Probably the fault like other owners.
Business license?
Honestly, business, thank you, Commissioner Milkevich, you saved me. So we also do require that rentals in the city, residential rentals, get business licenses. So we have an automatic way of reviewing these things. We also require with ADUs at this point, as we didn't originally, but we do now. Even if there's no work to be done, we require a building inspection permit to be done, so we can look at it and make sure that all these things are met before they get their license to rent the unit out. I understand that when this existed this way when the Joneses purchased the property, it's not been occupied since they purchased it. They'd like to do that, but do it correctly, so we appreciate the application. We are recommending approval with compliance with these 8 conditions as you see them. So if you have any questions for staff at this point?
Questions for staff? I just have a technical question.
Sure.
So we talked about the HVAC system and that they need to have a separate HVAC system.
Well,
they could have a primary one with a zone for a second.
A couple of ways you can do it. You can have a dual zone furnace or something, but even without that, a lot of times with the accessory dwelling units, they can use, can't just plug in a space heater and call it good, but that accessory dwelling unit for building codes has to be able to be heated to a certain temperature, and they have to be able to control that even if they're locked out of the main unit and the owners are on vacation. So what people do sometimes are baseboard heaters. That works. Fireplace inserts, electric fireplace inserts, that kind of thing works as well.
I've just never seen it worded as a separate heating system in the conditions in the past, and
we bring them in from the building official's comments, and sometimes it's the plans examiner instead of the building official, and they say things a little differently. But we don't like to mess with what they say.
Yep.
So.
Perfect. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
If we could have the applicant come up. Good evening.
Good evening. We are Daniel and Nicolia Jones.
And your address?
6611 Alfred Way.
Okay. Have you had an opportunity to review the 8 conditions?
We have.
And you'll be able to comply with those 8 conditions?
We will.
Do you have anything that you'd like to add to the presentation?
Currently, the smoke detectors are currently hardwired. So when the inspection comes by, I mean that work has already been done prior to us moving in. So.
Perfect. Any questions for the applicant? No? All right. This is open for public comment, so if anyone would like to speak to this issue, we'll ask that you come up, please. Good evening.
My name is Lori Dahl. Sorry. My name is Lori Dahl. I'm at 554 West Daniel Court, and our house is directly behind them. So we are, which way is that? Is that to the north of you? East? I'm terrible with directions. I probably shouldn't be up here talking. East of you. First of all, I want to say thank you for asking for permission for this. We built at the same time the neighborhood was building, and I don't think that the previous owners asked for this to be an accessory unit. So first and foremost, I want to say thank you to them for going about this the right way and asking permission. My only concern was that we heard there was going to be concrete in the backyard. And as a loan officer and a mortgage advisor, my concern would be saleability issue in the future for us as our backyard looks directly in them, behind them. And I don't know if that is appropriate to ask or whether that's even part of the proposal. So I was just kind of curious about that.
Okay. Well, okay, we'll bring it up. Good evening.
My name is Jesse Joe Salazar. I live at 548 West Daniel Court. And when I received this notice, I had a concern that, from what you tell me, they're going to have a business license in this process.
That's correct.
Which means they are forming a business at that property. Am I correct?
They have a business license, which gives the city the ability to revoke their ability to use this for that.
So their property is now a business?
No, it's still a residential. It's still residential.
Single family residential area?
Yes.
So, okay, but they're going to have a renter there. So how can it be a single family residential area and have 2 different people there?
It's the accessory dwelling is what does that legally.
That they can rent, okay, that makes not a single family residence, but a multi-unit residential business. Okay, so
let staff address that.
Let me get to what I'm concerned with. My property value, that area that I live in is single-family unit zoned. And now, if someone comes into that property in that area and starts a business of renting part of their house to other people, that ceases to be a family unit, single unit property. Am I correct?
No.
No.
The area, then anybody in there can apply and turn them into apartments then.
If they meet all of the legal obligations.
Okay. Now, is this going to affect my property value or my taxes because there is a business in that area now instead of single-family units?
We'll have staff address you here in just a minute.
That was my question,
Okay.
really. I just don't want my property value to go down because of someone else's property value is going to go up once they put in another unit in their house. And their taxes are going to go up when they pay for that. And I don't want mine to do the same thing. Okay?
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, we will close public comment. Staff, if we could, first off, I'll address concrete. We don't have anything in the application that states that they're doing anything with concrete work, at least in this application before us this evening. And then, Jared, if you could kind of address the legalities of an accessory dwelling unit.
Yeah, let me talk about that just real quickly. So there are, first off, there are single-family zones. There are many things that happen in single-family zones legally and permitted and conditionally that don't have anything to do with whether it's a single-family home or not. There are churches, there are schools, there are public utility yards, there are many other things. There are lots of homes that have businesses in them. We call them home occupation businesses. You can't throw a rock in the city without hitting a house that has a home occupation business in it. I process those every day, so I can tell you that. There are lots of those things. What we try to do with the regulations that relate to single-family zones that do allow some extra things in them or things that aren't necessarily one family living in one home is make sure that it doesn't impact the character of the neighborhood. So businesses like, certain businesses like a tax accountant working out of his home, you wouldn't see that. We don't allow a sign for it. It doesn't have clients coming to his home. There's not a constant threat of things like that. We've arranged the accessory dwelling unit regulations to do the same thing. So the way this home looks in this picture, the subject property, when it's being used as a single-family home right now for the living quarters of one family, is exactly how it will look when it's being used for two families, because we require that. For example, just a couple of examples from the code. Normal zoning and Utah state and really federal law considers a family, a single family, 4 unrelated people. Well, I won't get Bryant's here, so we won't talk about Supreme Court decisions, but in Murray, 4 unrelated people living together, have nothing to do with each other, blood or marriage or anything, living together are a single family. That's not a single family in a lot of people's opinion, but that is a single family under the law. In an accessory dwelling unit, we don't allow that. No more than 2 unrelated people can live together in an accessory dwelling unit, or two related or unrelated people, adults, and their children can live in an accessory dwelling unit. We limit the number of bedrooms. It can't be more than 2 bedrooms, can't be more than 1,000 square feet, can never be more than 40% of the total living area. That's all to lessen the impact. This is not a duplex. This is an extra allowance in a single-family home, in a single-family property, in a single-family neighborhood. So everything is geared toward making there be no impact. So, and the final kind of linchpin in all of that is to make sure that the property owners who own the home live in one of those 2 units. So they address any issues and they keep things looking single family. They have a vested interest in that as well. They're not absentee landlords just making money on the property by turning it into a duplex that we call something else. It's very much not the case. I think we have, Zach will correct me if I'm wrong, I think we have 35 or 40 of these on the books at this point in the city. Upwards of that, more than that.
Those are the official ones.
The official,
the permitted ones.
And more to the point, so the gentleman asked, or the neighbor mentioned being thankful that they came out and asked for permission. We hope that's the case in the future going forward, because it allows us to address issues and make sure that these are good units that are managed well, instead of kind of mother-in-law apartments that get marketed that way by real estate agents and used inappropriately. So we feel very confident that these regulations keep keep that single-family neighborhood character intact and allow this sort of, they're important to us because they allow another opportunity for people to live. The economy is difficult, and this is an important source of housing or alternative housing, and it doesn't impact the larger character than a residential neighborhood. To the point about property values, I did want to mention, we don't really control those. The market controls those property values. However, if you worry about property values tanking because of accessory dwelling units, there's several studies. The data just does not suggest that. It suggests quite the opposite. They're valuable. They make the property more valuable. So your property taxes are based on your use of your home. So your property taxes should not go up because somebody else installs an accessory dwelling unit. However, because the way appraisals work, when you go to sell, yeah, your value will actually go up, not down. That's generally how it works. I think I've addressed those. I don't want to miss anything. But
can you maybe just further explain the business license situation and how it relates to a business or an accessory dwelling unit?
Yep, and I'll get vehicles too. Thank you. So we actually they're rental licenses. They're not exactly like a business license. We have a different form for them. We have different standards for them. We process them through the business license office because it's the most convenient place to do it. And we like them to get these rental licenses because it allows us to review all these kinds of codes and conditions. But they're not business licenses even in the same sense that a home daycare or an in-home preschool or a home occupation business license for tax accounting or something. They're not really businesses in that sense either. But we do license them. We call them rental licenses because they're a little different. In terms of parking, again, so this is a single-family home, and because we don't, where you usually have parking problems are when people rent out smaller homes with not much driveway and not a garage or only a small garage to 4 college students living together or 4 other people living together and everybody's got a car. You don't even always have that control to say, if they didn't have this wraparound parking, we'd probably ask them to pour it before we would allow an accessory dwelling unit here. That's why we think it's important that they apply for these things. So you shouldn't see parking spilling out on the street. It's also not allowed. So on-street parking is allowed for everybody by right in a neighborhood. If you live in a neighborhood and it's a public street, you can park on the street as long as you move your car every 72 hours, that kind of thing. For an accessory dwelling unit, it's not. We require that they don't let their tenants park on the street. They have to provide a place for them to park off street, and they're always supposed to park off street under our rules. We don't want that. We don't want it to look like it's not supposed to look like a duplex or function like a duplex or feel like a duplex in a neighborhood. All the rules are geared toward that.
Jared,
yeah.
One thing, I know you've already commented on the discussion about cement in the backyard. It's not part of this application, but can you also, just for the knowledge of everyone, there are regulations in this zoning stating how much coverage of the plot's allowed, correct? So that they'd have to come to you and have those regulations cleared, and that's not part. That's not occurring now.
We would discourage that kind of thing, and it's not really needed here. They have some parking back there already, and they haven't talked to us about expanding that cement work, flat work. The tricky thing about cement work and flat work like that is that we don't do permits for that, so people sometimes do crazy things. They shouldn't cover more than 35 or 40% of the lot with hard surfaces, though.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hall.
Mr. Chairman, and so Mr. Markham and I have been on the commission, I think, the longest here, and this ordinance came in what, 2014, around there?
I came in 2014, and it was already in place.
So
I think
just
2012 or
2012. So right about the time that Phil and I started, and I think over the last 6.5 years, it seems that all the complaints we hear about mother-in-law apartments and rentals are the people that don't have the accessory dwelling unit.
Haven't gone through the process.
They haven't gone through the process. They didn't know the standards. They didn't know they had to have the off-street parking, and the neighbors didn't know that. So the neighbors come in and complain and say, you know, I don't want this turned into a duplex. But the reality is this accessory dwelling unit ordinance allows the city to really enforce it, but also to tell the residents who want that accessory dwelling unit what is expected of them as a responsible homeowner. So I'm of the opinion that it's a great ordinance, and it's actually making our city better because of it. So thanks for going through the process, absolutely.
So that's a good point, Mr. Woodbury. Okay, further discussion or a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve a conditional use permit to allow an accessory dwelling unit at the property address 6611 South Alfred Way, subject to conditions 1 through 8.
All right, I have a motion by Mr. Woodbury to approve a conditional use permit to allow accessory dwelling unit at the property address 6611 South Alfred Way, subject to conditions 1 through 8. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
A second by Mrs. Patterson. Call for a vote, please.
Mr. Woodbury?
Yes.
Ms. Patterson?
Yes.
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 Yes, motion carries. Good luck. Thanks for coming in and doing it the right way. Item number 8 this evening is Mountain Auto Sales LLC seeking a conditional use for an auto sales business at the property address 4651 South, 500 West, unit number 12. Is that applicant here? We'll have you up in just a moment. Mr. Smallwood.
I feel like we're having deja vu.
We've talked about this property a lot.
Yeah, we've talked about this property a couple times. So same thing. It's off 500 West by the Public Services Building. Auto sales is allowed conditionally within the MG zone. Here I've kind of outlined it's that far. So the top is south on this photo. So it's on that far left side, which faces east. There is a small little lot thing, and whatever, it's not working. So on that far east side is the little storage lot that they have. It's fenced off. Here you can see the floor plan and semi-site plan where that 3 fenced lot is. Here are some pictures. So it is fenced off. We're going to allow some parking of vehicles there. It looks like they have enough space there to park a few.
Where is that in relation to the Cherry Street access? Is that it, right?
That
same car and same
gray
picture?
car.
Perfect.
The gray car is Cherry Street,
Thanks.
where that's parked at. So we are recommending approval subject to the 10 conditions. Any questions for me?
Zach, with that storage area just being open chain link or that,
Sure.
is there no standard that we have that requires a screening of any kind?
Not that I know.
Okay.
Not in the MG.
Okay.
Additional questions? All right, thank you.
Thanks.
If we could have the applicant come up, and you should know this routine. State your name and address for the record.
Sue Cindy, Mountain Auto Sale LLC, 4651 South, 500 West, number 12.
Okay. Have you had an opportunity to review the 10 conditions?
Yes.
You'll be able to comply with those 10 conditions? Anything you want to add to the presentation?
Nope.
All right, perfect. Oh, I'm sorry. I guess any questions for the applicant?
No.
No? All right, now you're good. All right, we will open this up for public comment if anyone would like to speak to this issue. Seeing none, we'll close public comment and bring it back up here for motion or discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we approve the conditional use permit to allow vehicle sales business at the property addressed 4651 South, 500 West, unit number 12, subject to conditions 1 through 10.
All right, I have a motion by Mr. Woodbury to approve a conditional use permit to allow vehicle sales business at the property address 4651 South, 500 West, unit number 12, subject to conditions 1 through 10. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Mr. Markham. Call for a vote, please.
Mr. Woodbury?
Yes.
Mr. Markham?
Yes.
Ms. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Davis?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Hack?
Yes.
Mr. Nay?
Yes, motion carries. Good luck with all of your businesses there. All right. We're going to shift gears a little bit. Item number 9 this evening is Vine Meadows Subdivision, preliminary and final subdivision review for the property address 1595 East Vine Street. Is that applicant here this evening? All right, we will have you up in a moment. Mr. Smallwood.
Great. So this is 2 properties located on Vine Street. It was zoned A1. It's been rezoned to, I believe, R110. Yeah, R110. So that's a minimum of 10,000 square foot lots. And this kind of borders the newly created canal trail up in that top left-hand corner. So as you can see here, there's 7 lots along a half-made cul-de-sac currently. The applicant is proposing to deed over a small section of the west side of the property, which is the bottom of your screen, over to the neighboring property so that they can construct, or that the applicant will construct an 8-foot high fence to kind of screen that from the neighbors, the new houses from the neighbors. Additionally, we have a retaining wall here that will be located there. That's going to be retaining the cul-de-sac area. There's a couple feet drop off between the cul-de-sac area and the neighboring property, and I believe there's some horse property there that will be retained for those purposes. Oh, I'm not zoomed out far enough. That makes just a few things here. There's a grading plan for you. Just shows that it kind of gets a little steep in those lot 6 and lot 7. Should be maintained pretty well though. And as per the agreements with the canal trail, we don't allow any access to the canal trail from any of these lots here. Other than that, this is the old house that is currently there that will be demolished to make way. That will be a cul-de-sac now, I believe. And with that, we are recommending approval subject to the 10 conditions below. Anything that I left out or questions for me?
I have a question about
Sure.
the new road, the Sevilla, Sevilla Court
Yeah.
Circle? Will that connect with Rodeo Lane south of that, or will it be offset?
It'll be offset.
And traffic has already been looked at, and that's
Yep.
been approved.
The Trey, our city engineer, has looked at that and made sure that that meets all the separations and everything that's required of that.
I want to talk a little bit about the Tanner Ditch Company, and they've got their big, giant concrete box right alongside Vine Street there.
Yes.
So I assume that the applicant has to work with Tanner Ditch. Is there anything that would tell Tanner Ditch they have to move it?
I don't think we tell Tanner Ditch that they have to move it, but they have to work with them in order to.
And do we know, with the Vine Street reconstruction that's going on right there, tightest little spot of Vine Street all the way along that stretch, what the plans were for that if this development weren't to be coming in play?
I believe that gray area right there. Sorry. So the white is the existing Vine Street, and then there's that strip of gray. I believe that's being improved. So I believe that's going to be wide in that area. I could be wrong. Jared, do you happen to know?
I believe that'll be part of the dedication.
Okay. Any additional questions for staff?
No.
No. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
If we could have the applicant come in. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Paul Ranstrom, here representing Brad Reynolds Construction, 1142 East Murray Holiday Road in Salt Lake.
Okay. Have you had an opportunity to review the 10 conditions?
Yes.
And you'll be able to comply with those 10 conditions?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have anything you'd like to add to this presentation?
Just to clarify a little bit, that we would be dedicating that portion of property along Vine Street to widen, to install the required improvements along Vine Street in that area as we developed the site.
Approximately how many feet or linear feet? I mean, not linear feet, but we're like 5 feet, 6 feet.
That I don't know off the top of my head. I'd have to
okay
look
if you don't know.
What portion? I
Yeah.
don't know how big of a strip of property that is.
Okay.
Any information you can share with discussions with Tanner Ditch concerning that large box?
Yeah, our current plan shows that those boxes would remain where they are located, but we'd rebuild the top of the boxes so that they would almost look like a sewer manhole in the roadway there. So they would actually end up in the city's right of way there, as Vine Street was widened through that portion.
And I'm sure Trey has taken that
Yeah.
heavily into consideration. The plans for Vine Street redoing Vine Street through there have been in place for several years. Any additional questions for the applicant?
No.
No? All right. Thank you. We will open this up for public comment. If anyone would like to speak to this issue, come on up. Again, we just ask that you state your name and address for the
My name
record.
is Jay Jennings. I live at 6045 Fontainebleau Drive, Salt Lake City, 84124. My property borders this property. I'm on the northeast corner of where the property is, and I know my property is about a foot higher than what the present property is because of the drainage. I was wondering if the contractor is going to bring that property up to my level, or if they're going to put something in to retain that along that property line. The other question is, there are some big, large trees back there in that corner that are property. Mostly they kind of share my property and the old property, and I'm wondering if those are going to be removed. I would just soon have them removed. There's some old trees that are really crummy back there. And then, is there going to be a fence bordering my property provided by the contractor?
Okay, we'll answer those questions in a few moments.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Good evening.
I'm Loretta Jensen, and I'm off of Rodeo Lane. I live on 6289 Jamestown Circle. And I would just like a little bit more explanation of the map. And is that those homes are going to be on the east of the property, and the road is going to be on the west along that property where the horse property is there.
That is a correct statement.
Taking down that home there.
Correct.
That old home. So that will go in there, and then they'll just have that easement on the Rodeo Lane or the Vine Street there that they will take, right?
Correct.
So that's all going to be in. What size of lots are those going to be?
They're 10,000 square foot lot
10,000.
minimum.
Can't be any less.
Correct. Minimum, yeah.
Just single family.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, my name is Steve Breitling, and I live at 6153 Carriage Park Circle. I own the property just to the east. It's currently a 3/4 acre parcel. So I haven't had the benefit of talking with the developer about the plans and how it affects my property. So I'd like to know more about the wall that would be planned, or a fence, or whatever the division would be, and really if the elevations are a factor as well. I mean, I just really don't have any detail at all about this project and how it affects my property.
Okay.
So I'd like the benefit of that time to find out about all of those things that I may not even be thinking of at this point in time as well.
And you're adjacent to lot number 1, lot number 2?
Yeah, just I'm east of where these homes would be located, okay. So they would back up to my property.
Okay.
So it's where the Briger Investment,
perfect.
The 2 buildings are,
yep.
3/4. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Thanks. Anyone else? Good evening.
I'm Kathy Rossenbasner, 6050 South Fontainebleau. So our property is just east of the subdivision. So what I am just curious as to the reason why the road entering the subdivision is going to be on the west side rather than the east. Was there some kind of, I don't know, is there a reason why the road isn't on the other side?
We'll find out together. Anyone else? Welcome back.
Hey, thanks. I'm Roger Hagland. I live at 1575 East Vine Street. I'm on the west side. And I think part of the reason the road is on that side is because there is anticipation that when we're ready to quit playing with horses, that I'm quite sure that Mr. Reynolds is hoping that he could then buy our property, complete the circle of the cul-de-sac. And he has offered us, and we're not ready to move. To move out of Murray and keep horses means we're down by Payson or up in West Haven. And we've got friends who already won't drive this far from the avenues. The one issue we have is in that north, what is the applicant's property, the northwest corner, our northeast corner, there is the storm return drain for our irrigation. And we have 5 shares of irrigation off of the Tanner Ditch that when it drains, in theory, it drains into that box. And the box is questionably on a piece of it on our side and a piece on theirs, and we just need to be connected to it. As that, I saw in the plans that there was to be a grading there, and we just will need access to that drainage also.
Okay, and you've been in contact with the applicant, correct?
Yeah, he's been very upfront with us about what he was doing, and we like what he did along Vine Street, and have heard nothing but good comments about what he builds.
Perfect.
Still would have liked to have been a park.
Me too. I lobbied.
We tried. We did.
I know you did.
We did
Thank
try.
you very much.
Anyone else? Hello.
My name's Richard Duggar, 6173 Carriage Park Circle. Steve Breitling's my business partner. We own the land east of it together. My concern would be the irrigation that goes, comes through up on Vine Street there. It services my property, plus I don't know what they're going to do with their water shares. If they're going to be available. The construction out there now with these big cement boxes and stuff are an eyesore. They're almost scary. Vine Street's so so busy at times. I'm just waiting for somebody to smash into them. But everything's up above the ground. It should be lowered somehow. I wanted to know if there's anything to be done with that. I know that Murray City came in and started doing some renovation there and ripped out all of the shrubs that we had up front, and they were supposed to replace them. Never heard anything about it again. So I just don't want anything left undone, I guess, again, without knowing more about it. I'd like to know a little bit more about that.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, we will close the public comment. Probably bring the applicant up first and have you address a couple of points, and then if staff feels like there's anything they want to clean up. So just kind of reviewing notes I see here, kind of the discrepancy in grading along that east side, the trees in the northeast corner, and then fencing between the properties on the east side and yours, are some of the big ones that I heard.
Yes, we'll be addressing the fence. We'll be installing a 6-foot high privacy fence between our subdivision and the neighbors to the east that will be installed at our cost. So there will be a 6-foot privacy fence there. Grading, one of the conditions from the engineering department is that we have to retain all drainage from our site on our property so nothing drains onto the neighbor's side, and we've got it graded that way now to accommodate so that all of our water stays on our subdivision. Yeah, just addressing a couple of the other things. The trees that are on the property line, I'd have to take a closer look at exactly where those trees are, but if they're right on the property line, we will need to take them down in order to install the fence, of course. The road being located on the west side of the development, I think Roger mentioned the idea is whether it's us or someone else in the future develops that horse property there, then the road would allow development in the future to the west there. The irrigation connection, I'd have to look at that in greater detail, but our plan does show a drainage box that will be located right in the northwest corner of our property, to where I think if Haglund's needed to, they could get access, whether they needed to run a pipe to that box or some way to drain the irrigation from their water, as long as the ditch company was okay with them draining it that way. But
okay. Anything else you want to add?
No, I think that's it.
Any additional questions for the applicant while we have them up here? No?
Well, let me address the one gentleman was asking what, so the lots are all the 10,000 minimum, meet at least the 10,000 square foot minimum. We don't have plans finalized, so as far as elevations or what the buildings look like, we don't have that exactly finalized yet, but obviously they'll meet what the city's requirements are for the R110 zone that the property is currently zoned. And Brad mentioned just elevations probably similar to what you see at the project we did at Vine Street, about 500 East. So
perfect. Thank you. Anything that you feel like everything's been covered? Yeah. I'll speak to the Vine Street reconstruction a little bit and just say that phase 2 happens this next spring. I think that is where they go in and really rip up your half. My half has been ripped up all summer, so now it's your turn. And I think that they plan on having all of Vine Street finished next year, if I'm not, from that may be. I know that from my section, so I'm up towards the 9th East. From 9th East to 13th will be finished next year. There may be one additional year before it finishes out your direction, but I know that Trey Stokes, the engineer, takes a very close look at everything that's there. When he builds a road, he wants that road to be there for a good long time and a good quality road. He doesn't want to have to go back in and do a bunch of maintenance on it. So I would imagine that things like that irrigation box have been taken into account in all of that. He's pretty detail oriented. I can't speak to the shrubs. I don't know. I don't know. Great question. I would keep pestering just to find out. We've closed the public comment, so unfortunately I can't take your comment here. Any additional conversation and/or?
The only other comment I'd like to make is concerning the water rights and that, and any of you that are property owners in the area and obviously have water rights, you are a member of the ditch company basically, and so just communicate with the ditch company. Those water rights are sacred. They're very valuable. If they become available, I'm sure the ditch company is more than willing to negotiate with people. But the water, I think you can be rest assured that it's going to be taken care of. There won't be major changes to the distribution of the water rights.
Additional discussion.
Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion that we forward a recommendation of approval to the mayor for the proposed Vine Meadows subdivision on the property address 1595 East Vine Street, subject to the 10 conditions.
All right, I have a motion by Mrs. Patterson to forward a recommendation of approval to the mayor for the proposed Vine Meadows subdivision on the property address 1595 East Vine Street, subject to conditions 1 through 10. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a second by Ms. Milkevich. Call for a vote, please.
Patterson.
Yes.
Mr. Milkevich?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Hacker?
Yes.
Mr. Markham?
Yes.
Mr. Woodbury?
Yes.
Mr. Nay?
Yes, motion carries. Good luck with your development. Item number 10 this evening is REZAC seeking a zoning map amendment from A1 agriculture to R18 low-density residential. Is that applicant here this evening?
See, Tony.
Does not appear the applicant is here.
His attorney's here, right?
Perfect.
You're for REZAC, right? Yeah. Oh,
All right,
you
there's
are here.
Tony. Oh,
there's
Yes,
Tony.
sorry,
Yes.
they're right there.
Mr. Smallwood.
Great. So this property is located off Bullion Street and Aaron Park Circle. It's currently located in the A1 zone, and they are proposing to rezone that to R18. The future land use map in the general plan calls for this to become low density residential, which would include the R18 zone. So we are supporting this. Here are a few pictures of the existing conditions here. And with it's pretty straightforward. As you guys know, with these kind of with these applications, we don't like to speculate what could or could not happen here. With it being R18, you can pretty much guarantee it's just single-family homes. So, other than that, we are recommending approval of that. Any questions for me?
Questions for staff? No. Nope. All right. If we could have a representative of the applicant come on up and. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Randon Wilson. I'm a lawyer representing the REZAC family. My legal address is 111 South Main in Salt Lake. As you know from the materials provided, this property is agriculture, but it's surrounded by residential. It is the plan of the REZAC family to provide a couple of or 3 lots for additional homes on this property. It will obviously improve the neighborhood because this will require the demolition of some of the older buildings on the property, and we believe that it will enhance that whole neighborhood in a positive way.
Perfect. Any questions? No. All right. Thank you. We will open this up for public comment. So if anyone would like to speak to this issue, time is yours. And seeing none, I will close public comment and bring it back up here for discussion or a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that the Planning Commission forward a recommendation of approval to the City Council for the requested zone map amendment for the property located at 5668 South Bullion Street from A1 agricultural to R18 single-family low-density residential.
All right, I have a motion by Mr. Markham to forward a recommendation of approval to the City Council for the requested zone map amendment for the property located at 5668 South Bullion Street from A1 agriculture to R18 single-family low-density residential. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
A second by Mr. Hacker. Call for vote, please.
Yes.
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 Yes, motion carries. Good luck with your rezone.
Tony, sorry to see the property change, but we knew it was going to happen sooner or later, so good luck.
Yes, I've enjoyed seeing the sheep there over the years. It's been a fun
Yeah.
little farm to drive by over the years that we've been in Murray.
I know.
All right, item numbers 11 and 12 will be heard as a single presentation this evening. They are for the Smith Family Dental. They are seeking amendments to the future land use and zoning map amendment from R18 to RNB, residential neighborhood or business. Mr. Hall.
Thank you. So I appreciate that. This is, I'll just get straight into it. So the Fashion Place Mall in this aerial is on the left side of the screen. The magic button's not working for me tonight either, Zach. Sorry. On the left side of the screen, you can see the property highlighted there in red, the homes around it. Fashion Boulevard, just off screen is Winchester Street, 6100 South, or sorry, 6400. I always forget. Winchester Street. Thank you. This is the property is actually zoned R18. All the property right there immediately around it is zoned R18. Just off screen in this zoning, we'll look at another slide that'll show you more clearly, but just off screen to the north in this zoning, or in this slide, the zoning actually changes to general office. There are a series of offices going northward on Fashion Boulevard, and then again the block that's the Fashion Place Mall is in is zoned differently, but the block that the subject property is located in is zoned R18. I want to pull up, this is the general plan, future land use map. Both of the applications tonight, the one is to rezone from this R18 zoning to RNB, residential neighborhood business, and you're all familiar with that, but I'll probably go over a couple of things about it just for the record and for folks that don't know. The future land use map is what's supposed to guide the zoning. The future land use map indicates low density residential, that's R16, R18, R110, R112, those kinds of zones, all single family zoning. We've highlighted the property there. You can see that there are three lots there. Those don't actually exist. It was at one time approved for a 3-lot subdivision when the city allowed subdivision on private roads. We no longer allow that, and it was never executed as a subdivision. I gather it was a number of years ago, but somehow the data still made it into some of our GIS, and this was prepared by the consultants that we had for the general plan. So it is a single piece of property. So I thought I'd better clarify that just in case it was noticeable, and I think it is. So anyway, we have a couple of issues with the potential rezoning and with the potential change to the general land use or the future land use map. The first of those is that they ought to match. You can't really support as a staff the change of zoning unless there is a change to the future land use map. So our issues really have to do with kind of general plan, or our considerations have to do more with general plan considerations than with the current zoning first and foremost. Just a couple of pictures of the property so you can make sure we're all talking about the same piece. It is vacant right now. There's nothing on the property currently. You can
There's
see
a really nice fireplace pit.
There is
at the
a
back.
pit there somewhere, yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
There's some homes to the north and single-family home properties to the south and to the east as well. I'm standing in Fashion Boulevard. I was actually able to stand in Fashion Boulevard for a surprising length of time without getting killed to take these photographs. So Brad would have been proud. This is looking south.
Rest his soul.
This is looking south from the property and standing in front of the property and looking north. This right here where you can see the truck from the city park, this is actually an individual piece of property that uses a driveway for 3 homes going east from Fashion Boulevard. I included this aerial photograph just to kind of get a better idea of the general area. Rather than just the initial slides that we always show. So you can see again the mall. This is the subject property right here. You can see it it's easy to see from the aerials because it's vacant right now and everything else is built around it. So this is the beginning of a large area of single family development, as you can tell. But to the north, along Fashion Boulevard's frontage itself, well, several 100 feet deep into from Fashion Boulevard, there are these areas of offices to the north of that. And they actually do extend a little further south, just right here to 6100, where the new Washington Federal Credit Union was built, that new building. So the applicant, Smith Family Dental, currently operates to the north in, I believe, if I get it wrong, tell me, but I believe in this building, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So, and his, oh, further one more, okay. Where my daughter's orthodontist was, familiar with that building well. So, I spent a lot, spent a lot of money at that building. No problem. They turned out great. So, that building, he would like to build a new building down here, stay in the general area, build his new building. He did give us, and we gave you in the work session, a couple of pictures and some other information we wanted to go over in the public hearing before we move on. He's looking at this type of building. In the RNB zone, this is the kind of building we'd have to do because it would regulate a residential-looking building. It would regulate the size and kind of the massing. He doesn't really, for his business, need anything larger than would be allowed in the residential neighborhood business. So it makes sense in terms of the kind of zone that we would apply if this area were ready to be turned over to transition from residential uses to commercial uses. To build on that kind of point, he did actually conduct a survey in the area, talking to property owners, knocking doors, and having a discussion about how people would feel about that property being developed as a dentist's office instead of being used residentially as it had been in the past. So these signatures were all given, and I matched up these addresses. I didn't have the time or ability to really match ownership versus people that might be renting or living in them differently, but most of them did appear to be owners. The red properties that you see in the map to the right correspond to these addresses here. So all of these folks have basically been approached by the applicant and asked if they would be all right with that zone changing. They understand the RNB is a buffering zone, et cetera, and that it would be developed as a dentist's office. They've expressed their what's the word for non-concern? Their lack of concern with that kind of a change. The blue is obviously the subject property. Some of the issues that we have as staff is that when you look at this, it does suggest a couple of things. That things in this area have changed over time. But what I see mainly as a staff person looking at it is that things have changed around it to the north and to the south. The west, obviously, with the mall, although that's been that way for a very long time. And there's some age to that zone to the north as well, that general office zoning. The newest thing up there is the Wasatch Federal Credit Union building, and that is fairly new. But that property was general planned to be office for a number of years before it was finally rezoned to office as well. So what I see is an established pattern. I know that there's some changes that have taken place and that these folks have indicated that they're not concerned about it. But I see an established pattern wherein this large residential area is a very established residential area and has remained so in spite of other changes that have gone on around it. And the most recent of those changes being that we examined this map at least at a large scale in the general plan update that was done over the last few years and did not change that general land use or future land use map designation for this property. So we have viewed it as a residential area and as a residential property up to now, and we continue to view it that way. So we are recommending denial actually of both of the requests to amend the general plan future land use map from single low density residential to residential business, and to subsequently also to amend the zoning map from single family residential R18 to residential neighborhood business. Any questions for staff?
I have a question, Jared.
Sure.
So what's the potential for 6230 South to actually extend west from its current ending point to connect into Fashion Place?
Let me go back to the first slide to kind of address that, Ned. So we're asking, if you're asking
6230 South,
what's the potential to connect that down?
Yes.
That would be the easiest way, for starters, that would be the easiest way to develop more than 2 lots residentially on this parcel, and maybe potentially then remove the interest from commercial developers in it. However, 6230 dead-ended there because this is actually a piece of property right here that's owned by the family that owns this house and used for access. Actually, I believe they own that one and that one. I could be wrong, but two parcels there. There's frontage. This particular the subject property actually has frontage just on that portion of 6230, but it's only got a half of that right-of-way width in frontage. Otherwise, we could extend it through this property. But you can't actually even get 6230 extended through this property, and even if you did, it wouldn't leave you anything left over to develop. So without the cooperation, one of two things would have to happen. Either the property owners here would have on the north, because the pointer's not working anymore. Property owners on the north would have to cooperate and be willing to dedicate that land for a right-of-way. And then the owner of the subject property would have to dedicate land for right-of-way as well to make it wide enough and make it work. That's not been possible in the past, simply because no one's been willing to do that. The other possibility would be condemnation by the city through eminent domain, and that's not going to happen either. You're aware of how that's worked. So 6230 is not likely, or it's not likely at all.
Can I piggyback off of his question and ask about drive access off of 6230 South, since you have frontage back in there?
Driveway. It's a good question. You don't have enough frontage for me to subdivide with that being the frontage. That wouldn't be legal.
Okay, because I only have like 20 feet wide instead of my 80 feet minimum.
You have to have 80 feet.
Okay.
So.
Mr. Hall, can you clarify off of Fashion Boulevard here to the east, is that all R18 as well?
To the east here? I'm sorry. To the east of Fashion Boulevard, to the south of the subject property? Yes. Okay. Actually, that's all R18 zoning until you get to the very end at Winchester Street where the city property is. There's a church and city property for a power station. I believe that's actually zoned R18 as well. They're not used as single family, obviously, but they're zoned R18.
Isn't there that Instacare up on the corner of 59th and Fashion? I mean, that's quite a ways north.
It's a ways down.
But what's that zone? Is that
general office?
That is general office there. Okay.
That Instacare might be in the hospital zone, actually.
Okay. Is that the only non-residential zoning on the east side of Fashion Boulevard?
Oh, no. Everything from 59th down to
right,
6230.
No.
Well.
Zoom out a little bit.
There's a church and a power facility, which is deceiving.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to get the broader view of, so up on like 6100 and those buildings on east of Fashion, those are zoned general.
Other than the areas that we have, all of this is R18.
Right.
Except for the areas that we've
all the way up to
Winchester.
5900 South.
Right.
Correct.
So going north on Fashion
Going north
Boulevard.
as well, except for a few spots in here, we have some general office zoning.
But everything along Fashion Boulevard there is all commercial, right? There are no longer any residential uses anywhere up till 5900 South. That's a true statement.
That's right. That's true. So it's possible that in the future, and I think staff's kind of our view of it is that it's possible that in the future some of that could, or even in the very near future, that some of that other frontage of Fashion Place Boulevard could convert or transition from residential uses to office uses or R&B. But we would need to be able to feel like we could support it as staff. We'd need everybody that owns property, and they're probably 3 properties deep, to be approaching the city asking for that change.
Could you go to the figure ground?
I'm sorry.
To the figure ground that you have of the property, the zoning map.
Sorry. Yep.
So even with that, I mean, you in order for you to be supportive of this, you're going to have somebody compile a significant number of properties to be able to, for you to entertain something. So let's take that small little island that just kind of stands alone that is between Fashion and 3000 East. If someone came in and were able to acquire those 3 properties, would you feel different about that than if you would if something further north?
You know, really, because this area, again, because this section is still intact and still used residentially, between the ends that are public utility and the church, which is really a residential use, between the end at Winchester that's the public utility and the north end that's been slated to be general office zoning for a number of years, 13 years or so, all of this middle section is still residential and has been slated to be residential, and we just kind of view that as historically residential.
Wow.
So it can appear that because the main thing that makes it look like this is ready to become, to us, that it's ready to transition to something non-residential is simply the fact that this property is large and vacant. It's 0.88 acres and it's vacant. It's difficult to imagine subdividing on it without the flag. It would only be able to be subdivided with a flag lot subdivision. That's not everyone's cup of tea. It's hard to imagine that on Fashion Boulevard, but if this weren't vacant, I don't think we would be having this conversation. On Woodrow Street, there were some other some other forces at work, and we had started that process. We haven't done that here, and we've chosen, I guess, over the years not to do that here. That's kind of how we see it.
If two of the property owners directly south of the new credit union were to come to you and do that, would you see that as a different type of application than where we have this kind of a standalone piece of property?
Yes and no. So yes, in that you could make the argument that we always make. We call it natural expansion. So you look at properties in the area and say, look, these are not being kept up, or they're not being utilized fully anymore. We'd like to purchase some of them and convert them to offices. I have a little trouble imagining that happening just because they're not very deep. It was hard to squeeze that Washington Federal Credit Union in, and it's a little deeper than the properties that you're
And it's a
talking
tiny
about.
credit union.
That's why I say it would probably be several properties, or at least 2 properties deep from Fashion Boulevard to make it a meaningful transition zone. So I'm not sure. So yes and no. And on the one hand, yes, because it's natural expansion. But on the other hand, again, if that's where it begins, you know, I'm not sure it's a great spot for it to begin, and we'd have some concerns, and I have to look at that one fully as well. And I'd probably come to some of the same conclusions. It's not, the area has not really started to change, other than that this property is vacant.
This property has been vacant for a number of years.
And that does factor. If there were half a dozen vacant properties between those, if half of these were vacant or a third of them were vacant, it might be a different discussion as well. I just don't see the deterioration of the residential zone as much as the brokers that you have letters from real estate professionals. I don't see the deterioration as much. But that's me.
I know a number of people that live back in the neighborhood. I think it's actually a
Yeah,
fairly...
and when I went and drove by that and pondered the situation, I only saw 2 houses that orient towards Fashion Boulevard.
Yeah, that orient toward Fashion Boulevard.
That are the 2 immediately north of that property.
Yeah, and the others are mostly on the back roads.
The others orient to the street leading into the...
Yep. That's true.
And to be honest, one of the houses looked like it might be vacant or distressed, I'll say. And so I'm just wondering, with us being, you know, to me it seems more like we're close to approaching that viability of taking that and making it a neighborhood zone like we've done up on Ninth East so beautifully, where we've got those offices that look like houses that mesh with the neighborhood so beautifully. And if we are going to do that elsewhere, and, you know, right up to this point, we've allowed commercial. So it's just hard for me to wrap my head around not letting this one be the neighborhood zone as well.
I'll push back a little bit on that point. It just in that we just had the opportunity to consider those changes in the last 18 months, and we didn't.
Well, and I'll push back on that. It's a big, complex plan that is going to have failings. You cannot say that's a perfect document.
I agree.
There is no such thing.
Right, and there are little areas I think we would miss.
I tend to agree that the RNB zone is a perfect fit for this area through there, and I grew up in that area, and I still have my son still lives in the family home there, and I see this as a way to enhance that corridor right there to this lot. I think that's a natural stopping point from it's not 6230 the street north of there, 6215 from there down to here for R&B to designate that. And I think once you have the first domino fall, I think that you will see a very nice transition.
And I tend to agree with Phil. I mean, it's been vacant for how long? A long time, and it's been residential, right?
Number of years,
Yeah.
at least 4 years.
And how many applications have we had in Murray for new builds? I mean, tons.
Yeah.
It's hot right now, and we're still not having any action on this one because people don't want to build a home there. So that's the purpose of the RNB zoning, is to provide that. So if someone drives by and there's a home next to a dental office, it doesn't look out of place. You know, I kind of think like Phil on this. I mean, I struggle with this one particularly because I know the general plan. I know we had opportunities to do that, but I believe a little bit more like Phil. So
Jared, when the R&B began on 9th East, what was the evolution of that? Was it all of a sudden in the middle of 9th East, a random property decided to become R&B? Do you know what I mean?
That's a good question. And I was selling diabetic supplies
Right.
at the time, so I don't think I wasn't there.
I know that you weren't there and you weren't like with the.
Looking at the documents, though, the first general plan, the 2003 general plan, identified that corridor as a hotspot, I think is what they called them, and it was just seen kind of the way that we're describing. There were homes that weren't being taken care of. There were homes that were to the point where they had to be demolished, and then they just weren't being rebuilt as homes. The same thing with Winchester Street. So that R&B zone at the time was suggested by the 2003 plan, and then was written right after that and implemented on those frontages, saying these properties are distressed. It's not, these larger corridors, these highly trafficked corridors are not providing, they're not being the kind of buffer that they ought to be, or they're not being a good zone edge because there's no buffer from them to these residentials. So you put a very controlled, neighborhood-oriented commercial zone in place that then forms a better sort of edge between that high-traffic corridor and the residential neighborhood.
Right. And
same kind of thing we're talking about.
Right. And do you feel like, it happened because there was a natural creep, like you were saying, of the expansion of that area? I guess my problem with this property is it seems like everything's the same all around it, and then randomly, but does it have to be the first? Do you know what I'm saying? Like the first thing that has to be zoned R&B.
Well, and that's I guess where I take issue with the application itself. So the kind of thing what Phil and Scott are talking about, what many of you are talking about, makes some sense. The time, but it ought to be considered as a whole. It ought to be considered as a corridor or as a whole section as opposed to a single lot. So it's just kind of out of order for me. If we were going to consider it, I'd rather look at it with all of them as part of it. So if there is any impetus to move it on with a recommendation to change the zoning, to change the future land use map, I would appreciate as a staff person, if that's the case, that it be accompanied by a directive that we look at the other properties as well. We don't, let me go back to one thing here too. We know what the folks in red here think about it. We do not have a good idea of what everybody else missing thinks about the frontage of that property changing. And it shouldn't be done as a straw poll vote. I made this map to kind of make it clear that the applicant's made a great effort, and some of these things make sense, and not just to him, but to some of you and to a lot of folks. And a lot of these people don't have any kind of issue with a change like this. And it's a pretty innocuous change, right? The dental office, a small dental office. The R&B zone, as Phil and Scott have said, is exactly the right zone to put in this kind of area if we're going to make that kind of a change. I'm just not ready to make that recommendation as a staff person to you. I'm not going to lose a lot of sleep about it, but I'm not in a position to make that recommendation to you tonight.
So how much time would have to pass before we would feel good about making a recommendation to change?
To change the general plan? As again, like you said, we just barely adopted it. We're approaching 2 years in. We're about a year and a little over a year and a half now. We're getting there, a couple of years.
And was every property, I mean, I know we participated in a couple of the open houses, but was every property looked at on a granular level like this?
No.
See, and I didn't think so, because everything I went to, it was this general area is residential. Do we like that? Yeah, we like that. Absolutely. So we didn't take situations like this into consideration when planning the general plan.
Right, that's correct.
And that's kind of where I'm like, okay, and then and you can see just looking at this map right here. I mean, obviously you got the church down there, and then what's north of the one on 6215? There's the red, and then what's the?
That's Washington.
This
Federal.
is a home.
Yeah,
and that's Washington Federal up there, right?
Washington Federal.
Yeah.
Is
So
right here.
I mean, you can see. To me, it seems like that it will be going that way. We may be premature, but 10 years from now, I see we'll have a lot of R&B along here, and it's the appropriate zone. So where does it start? Does it start now, or does it start 3 years from now?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to take into consideration too as we look at that kind of larger conversation about all of the properties instead of just the one that's subject property in this application. Is that this is a small dental office. We've had some successes with the R&B, but we've had some knockdown dragouts too, and the larger the properties get, typically the tougher those conversations are because of massing of buildings. And
But one thing this applicant has done that other applicants that have been less successful, you see that he's gone canvass the neighborhood, he's talked to the neighbors, he's engaged with the neighbors, and that is clearly something that we have seen other people not do, and it hasn't gone well.
A couple of things that lead me to think this would be a good R&B is the fact that 6230 South is not going to come through and connect into Fashion.
Yeah.
If you look at the back property line, the east property line of the property we're talking about, it lines up perfectly going north to the commercial properties north of 6200. And the fact that we've noticed that the residential properties on Fashion Place, there are only 2 or 3 that even have access off of Fashion Place, which, very similar to 900 West, is a major arterial.
So the two things I'm hearing is time, because proximity to the new general plan being in place, and then continuity or everyone agreeing. So I think what I'm hearing you say is either we wait till we're more comfortable and the plan has eroded where it should erode, or we have the whole community along there agree.
Well, yeah, that's kind of my feeling on it. Yes, I'm uncomfortable with the length of time that the general plan has been in place at this point, and I'm a little uncomfortable with this being one single piece, an applicant. There's not 2 or 3 more coming in with it saying we'd like the whole frontage. You know, then we can say as a city, maybe it's time for the whole frontage to be general planned for R&B, just the way we've done it on 900 East and Winchester. We general plan it all for R&B and then let them come in as they want to and rezone
I
and
guess
support them.
part of the reason I say that is because what Commissioner Hacker just said, if possibly, if the applicant spoke to everyone in that square that Mr. Hacker just described and got everyone to be on board with the idea that it might be easier to swallow.
It might be easier to swallow. Again, I would still, though, I got to reiterate, I'm still
I
a little
think
uncomfortable with the length of time it's been since we adopted this plan. And although we don't look at everything granularly in that plan, we did actually, in cases where it had come up, we were aware of them, we tried to do that. And in an update, we would probably look more carefully at this. We looked at Woodrow Street very carefully, and that was not an easy process. That was a 3-month process, and in the end, it was not at all what we expected it to be in the beginning. So I get nervous about making a decision that then starts to impact those future decisions as well without having the benefit of all of that review and all of that information.
Yeah, and Jared, as a matter of procedure, obviously if it's denied, they can't come back for another year, right?
Not with the same application.
With the same application can't come for.
The same request.
But the zone change, but since, I mean, so they could come back at a GO or something else, or
different zone.
But they can't come back for an RNB for at least 12 months.
Well, but not at that one property location.
Right, at that property.
7
Can be
locations.
made, that's correct.
The same application, so someone else could come back.
People joined it, it could be made again.
Right, but this property, this that we're talking cannot come back for a year for that zone change. If it's denied.
Not for the same request on its own.
Right.
But with others, it could come
But
back.
with others, it could come.
Yeah, that would be a
Correct.
different application. We just won't, the ordinance is that we won't rehear the same application.
Right, right, yeah, I just
You're
want
exactly
to
right.
make sure that it was, you know.
You're exactly right.
So, Mr. Hall, if the properties directly to the north of this someone was able to come in and acquire all of the properties to 320 East, are you comfortable with 320 East fronting neighborhood resident or neighborhood business?
Are we talking about this section here?
Just that northern block, yeah.
So yeah, this depth is
Between
kind of established.
6215 south and
See,
3.
that's the kind of thing I have not considered because it hasn't been on our radar, and I'm not ready to say. I don't have enough data to. I'm going to refrain from quoting
like
Sherlock Holmes.
8 homes, right?
Yeah, that's a big change.
That's a big chunk.
It's a big
So
change.
It's if a whole third of Murray decides to do this.
No, but I'm just saying. I mean, like, what do you see as the limit of R&B's penetration in this area?
That is my problem. I don't know. I don't know what it should be, and I'm unprepared to say that. Since I can't say that this is appropriate, I'm likewise subsequently unprepared to say that that's appropriate as your staff person. That's my problem.
Looking at the map, you see lines that appear to be hard lines that make sense for the
Quite
depth.
that hard, but
yeah, I don't think quite that far back in, but.
So that's kind of the nutshell version of my issue as a staff person trying to make a recommendation that's meaningful to you here. I have to look at the length of the time that we've had it as a general plan. It is the designation that it is, single-family residential. You could subdivide this property. No one's wanted to do it yet, but that could, a lot of things can factor into that. Asking price, things that we don't control. And then you couple that with one other thing. I don't have any concerns with that. I can imagine that kind of an office building being there, meshing really well with the neighborhood and everything going very, very swimmingly. I just can't get straight to that from doing only this and recommending for it right now. I just can't get there.
I'll tell you what, unless anyone else has additional questions for
mine
for
was
Mr.
going to
Hall.
be legit. Yeah.
I think we've kicked you around a little bit. Why don't we have the applicant come on up, and why don't we have the applicant tell us why we're wrong or right?
It seemed like a discussion part. Yeah.
Yes, we'll get there.
Oh, I forgot we hadn't even heard from the applicant yet. We're having so much fun with Jared.
Name and address for the record, please.
Yes, it's Morgan Smith, 6233 South Fashion Boulevard. And I can't tell anyone if they're wrong or right, but I'm so unfamiliar with doing this, and thanks, Mr. Hall, for all your work. I will give you a little background. I hope not take up too much of your time, but I've thought about this. I never get nervous for anything. Last night I wasn't sleeping. I was thinking about this, and that's very unusual for me. But my dad and I have ran a dental office. I've been there almost 12 years. We're just a little bit further down, he pointed out, Mr. Hall did. My father's been there 40 years in Murray. Absolutely loved it. He's since retired. I've been there 12 years almost, and our building was just sold, and they're coming in with different tenants, and we hope that they would maintain that outside better than the old people did, which was a struggle of ours. And with the new tenants that bought the building, Intermountain Donor Center, they're going to be bringing 50 to 60 people in at work at time, which is going to make it very complicated for us for parking. Hopefully we can address that with them. But our lease is coming up in a couple of years, and my goal has always been to be able to manage the snow removal for our patients, have a brand new place with newer technologies, with updated office type things. With a 40-year-old building, you're a little bit limited what you can do doing that. We've loved Murray. We love the people in Murray. A lot of my best friends growing up are from Murray. The highest amount of our patients are from Murray. So I really would love to stay local to serve patients. I would love to have beautiful landscape in a building. Our office is very family friendly. We're not a corporate type office. We care for people as much as they are our own family or ourselves. We see them that way. We want to have a positive impact to this area because we don't want to take away from any neighborhoods, especially this one. The landscapes around and the homes around are amazing. They're older homes and they're taken care of meticulously. I love it. They have a neat feel and neighborhood view. I went and walked around and tried talking to as many neighbors as I could.
Which we applaud, by the way.
All right. I tried 3 different times. If I was to have to go get the rest of the signatures, it was tough because going around and finding people at home is difficult. I have to juggle life with my wife's health challenges, my son, and just normal son activities, and then church callings along with the business. So it's not the easiest thing, but I did a lot of time, which was fun to do and get to know people, and it was neat because one of the days it was beautiful, sunny, and most of the people had their front door open, and that's Murray. And so I wouldn't want to take from that, and I feel like this is an isolated lot that has been there for years, and like Mr. Woodbury said, this lot has probably been on the market in blank for 7 to 8 years, and in this hot of a market for residential, it should have been gone. But as we know, for the economy, it hasn't. And so I really think that this is a time to let this be isolated. This doesn't affect any of the neighbors, in my opinion, in the sense that their homes can stay and be and exactly how they are. This will enhance by making it look nice landscaping. And then some of the neighbors have felt like it's been almost 30 plus years since there's ever really been somebody there. And I don't know. Like Mrs. Wilson said, on 9th East, there's only, like 9th East has transition. I feel like a lot of those have been really nice and they have looked really well. And this lot faces, and the curb access is Fashion Boulevard. So all of the traffic would not affect any other neighbors whatsoever. And there's only 2 lots that really face Fashion Boulevard. So that being said, it could be an isolated thing. The rest of the homes can stay. There'd be no effect on that. I mean, I know you want to do a general plan, and as long as the homes stay that way, you could take it one step at a time. The west side, you know, is Fashion Mall. I tried talking to a few people on the north. A few of them weren't around to talk to. The south, I talked to them quite a bit. They were a little bit easier to find a way. The one that is right immediate next to it on the south, he said, that's great. He's good luck. And it wasn't, he was distracted with his dog and things like that, so I wasn't able to ask him, hey, would you be interested in signing this or anything? So he didn't, but he gave me the heads up. And like Mr. Hacker was saying, there's a lot of possibilities for other homes maybe in the future that could help their value. Washington Mutual, seeing that was kind of interesting. That was a home, he got ran down. From what one of the neighbors told me, that it was sad because there was some drugs going in and out. That house value went down. It was abandoned and had major problems, so they just had demolition it. Where hopefully none of that ever happens along Fashion Boulevard, but doing this is going to upkeep and make things look really nice. I had a couple realtors that I know, both of them had been in the business for 40 years, asked their opinion. They wrote little letters. I understand the R&B rules. I read through it. That's exactly what I had pictured doing in this facility, just as simple. I was going to talk on if you were to try to connect that street, the 2 houses that are directly east of that lot right there, one of them called me and the other one signed the thing. They said, as long as you don't connect that street, that's the last thing we'd want. And I said, I would never, that wouldn't make any sense. I just want access off Fashion Boulevard because that's where our patients are used to, where we currently are. When I did go talk to everyone, because we were discussing that for a minute, the 26 people I was able to talk to, 22 were in favor. 2 of them weren't able to sign it due to circumstances, but 20 did sign it, and I thought that was really neat. I did talk to them about how we're a quiet office. We're 8 to 5:30. We're typically out of the office at 5:30, Monday through Thursday. So it's a very quiet office. Like I said, we're not a corporate office, so we're not putting a lot of people through it. It's myself right now that works, and then I have a Murray resident, Dr. Catherine Cameron. She works 2 days a week. She's a mother a few days. And then since I'm new to this, I had no idea who we were meeting with tonight, and I thought we were meeting with city council members. I'm glad I meet with you guys. And but because of that, I didn't know if they got the information or nothing. So I sent them emails, and I tried calling each one of them to just get their opinions, expertise on this. And I talked to one of them, and he said he's talked to 2 others, so 3 out of the 5 he said are on board with moving this forward. And the other one then called me back and said, hey, that sounds great. Here's what my thoughts are. So I was very encouraged by that, but this has also been a really roller coaster for me because this would be a huge opportunity and blessing for business, my family, and everything. And I really feel like the people of Murray. I'm not trying to be like a pump-up talk, but it seems like this is where we're going.
You're a salesman right now, so.
Good. All right. I've never been one before. When I went around and talked to the neighbors, it was funny. Some people would be like, "Are you a politician?" I'm like, "No, I'd be bad at that."
You're like, "I'm a dentist."
I had
you have lovely molars. Would you sign this?
I did get one new patient from knocking on doors, so maybe it's a good idea.
Well, then all is good.
So thank you for your time. Any questions while I'm here?
Yeah, I have a couple questions for you. So first off, what's the current size of your office right now?
Just barely over 4,000.
4,000. How many chairs do you have?
We have 9.
You have 9 chairs. So the hygienist, you're running multiple hygienists, and then yourself.
We have a couple hygienists, and we'd probably downsize a little bit from what we currently have.
How many patients would you say you see in a day between the hygienist and the actual?
That's a great question. Probably around 25 to 34, somewhere in between there.
Sounds like the demographic that everyone.
Any reason why this piece of property, other than the fact that it's available, gives you some advantage that you couldn't find, say, in a piece of property on Winchester that's already zoned as RMB?
Size is some of it, you know, due to parking spaces. You know, we like to have a lot of help in our work, so we have a few employees, and then we want to definitely have adequate parking for our staff.
I mean, this piece of property seems large for your needs, honestly.
It would be a little bit bigger than what we need, which would give us great opportunity for landscaping.
That's it for me. Any additional questions?
Did you try to contact the two houses that front Fashion Boulevard for signatures?
I did. So the one directly north, talked to him for a minute. He was a nice gentleman. Roger was his name. And he said, I'm not a big fan of it. We talked about what he thought. He said, you know what, that gives me some good thinking. I'm going to think on this. And I gave my cell phone and said, hey, you call me anytime. Love to talk to you. The one directly north of that one, so the middle of those three, I found out that she has some health problems. She won't answer the door ever, and it looked like that door hadn't been used for a long time. So I tried sliding my phone number and a couple of information pieces in the door for her.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions?
No.
Nope. All right, thank you. We will open this up for public comment, so if anyone is here to speak to this issue, it's your time. Good evening.
Rebecca Williams, 552 East, 5400 South. So my husband and I own that piece of property, and we have owned it since early 2011. We bulldozed a meth house off that house, or off that property, and we are prayed for in their church every week for getting rid of that meth house, because they had a lot of drug crime in the area too. I bought it because I own a birth center in Murray, and I bought that piece of property because I was going to build another birth center. And having looked at property for several years while I bought my first birth center, that was the only property that was big enough, and it had everything that you would want for a little birth center type business. And it would be kind of on that, you know, the residential neighborhood business. It has very good access to the freeways. It's near commercial for shopping, and it was ideal. And I talked to neighbors before I bought it, and they loved the birth center idea. And I knew it was going to be a few years out, so it wasn't a big deal about zoning at that time. And I thought, worst case scenario, we would build on that, my husband and I. But my husband had open heart surgery this year, and an acre lot is too big for us. So we will sell that property, and we will sell it soon. I think the dentist is perfect for that property. The people who have talked to us about buying it the most are all developers who want to put big townhouses on it. And it's just not a townhouse neighborhood. And I just want to support the dentist, because that was my original intent for that property.
We're not going to put
And I
15 there.
would tell you that the neighbors are elderly. It's that having had that property since 2011, there has not been a lot of improvements in that area. They're elderly, and I think it will decline. This is a good step for that area. And I don't think you can find any other chunks of property that big.
All right. Thank you.
You did a nice job. Thanks for waiting.
Good evening.
Good evening. I'm very happy to be here with you today. This has been a very good, smooth-running meeting this night. I applaud you all for how you've handled it.
While you're applauding us, can you tell us your name and address?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm Stephen J. Smith. I was a dentist who served for 40 years the community of Murray, just up the street from there on North, in that building that's on 6065 South, next to where the remodeling is taking place and some businesses up there. But anyway, my son has been in practice, like you said, 10 years with me, and I've been retired for 2 years. And I can just vouch for what his intentions are in this piece of ground. we looked at the corner up there on 5900 South there and put some serious money in, well, not money, but we're going to put some money in there. And there were 2 half-acre lots that were kind of rejoined. But they wanted an exorbitant amount of money for those, like $700,000, $800,000 for that little combination. And that was out of his range of being able to finance this. And I appreciate what you just said, Mrs. Williams. That was wonderful. I appreciate so much what you said. And her price is still a lot, you know, $300-something plus $1,000, almost $400,000 for that lot. But no one wanted to spend that to put a home on that facing Fashion Boulevard, and that's the only way that lot could be developed residentially. And so I feel frustrated that it hasn't, you know, for her sake, hasn't sold a long time ago. But all these years it's been sitting vacant. And as I've envisioned coming down that road, as I have for 40 years on Fashion Boulevard, coming north over there, and I see the church, and then I see the other home that's right next to that church area. They're not facing anywhere but back into the residential areas, not accessed from Fashion Boulevard. And then that vacant lot, and then kind of an alleyway there next to it on the left-hand side that's gravel. It's not even asphalt. It's just a gravel piece of ground there. And I just think to myself how nice it'd be to be able to have an area there, an island of landscape beauty that would enhance that street, complement that just newly landscaped place just down on the corner, the intersection by the light there by the Western Finance place, that bank kind of place. But I could see how that would enhance the beauty of the place, and whether or not those other homes ever do go, you know, this zoning type of thing, or whether they stay residential the rest of the time. So what? Let it come in its own will, its own time. But this is an opportunity that I think would be a great chance to both have this owner of the land and this young man have an opportunity to develop and make a beautiful place there that would enhance the beauty and the value of that street. And if it opens up further down the road, then great. But he has a time limit on this thing. To do this, we have to have this thing kind of done and sealed before December 21st, or else it's a no deal. And so I just think it's an opportunity for all of you to make this happen, and hopefully, you know, we can have support on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Seeing none, we will close public comment. And Mr. Hall, anything else you'd like to add? Bring it back up here for discussion or motion.
I guess we've had a lot of our discussion.
We have had a lot of discussion.
We've talked to death, to be very honest with you.
Well, I agree, but as much as I like the applicant and as much as I think he's done a great job with this application, there are I'm really torn about what to do because, number one, Fashion Boulevard is not 9th East and it is not Winchester. Both of those streets are much busier than Fashion Boulevard. Even though this is next to the mall, this is not the main access to the mall. This is not where most of the traffic goes. We are not having a major buffer for that neighbor. Yeah. But number two, my other problem with putting an R&B in this specific spot, although I think that one, someday it probably will be, and two, that will probably be the perfect location for it. R&B, as far as I understand it, on 9th East and on Winchester was a solution to a problem of blighted zoning that we had no solution for. That area needed some kind of solution. Those neighbors needed some kind of buffer. This neighborhood has nothing that needs to be buffered from. This is not blighted yet. Maybe someday it will be. Maybe in the future that's something to consider. I would also feel much more comfortable with it if this was a natural creep of what was already existing. And I get that someday, you know, the office will be coming down from 6215, you know, further down. I would feel much more comfortable with that than randomly picking out this lot that, as it stands, is circled on 3 sides by a residential area. There's not abandoned houses, there's not empty things. That on 9th East we were trying to solve a problem. Nobody was buying those empty houses because nobody wanted to live on 9th East. We're not there yet. This isn't, I don't see Fashion Boulevard the same way, needing the same buffering, or this particular property needing the reinvestment and the reinvigoration that the RNB has brought to other places in the city. My final thing to say is the point that Mr. Ney made. I love the project. I love your idea. I think that there are places in the city that are available, already zoned to do that exact thing. And I don't feel comfortable changing the zoning for this one property where there might be other options that are already available.
Commissioner Markham, I know we've talked a lot, but I still like to hear what everyone's thinking a little bit, because I'm extremely torn too. I like this applicant. I like his idea. His family is a good part of our community. I like to support that. But at the same time, I have all the concerns that Commissioner Patterson just said. I'm concerned about making a change for one great family and not for the whole community necessarily. I don't. What is everybody thinking?
Well, and you know, I guess I have a little bit different opinion about the properties to the north of this piece of property as well. And without getting into conjecture on my part, I will just tell you that I grew up in this neighborhood. My parents moved in on 6230 South in 1962. My mother passed away about 5 years ago. My son now lives in the house. So it's continually been in my family for over 50 years. That corner right there, in my definition, is blighted and has been for some time. I'm not prepared to sit up here and give you exact reasons why, but I think that anything that would be a domino that would help to redevelop that particular area and join it with the other medical development, R&B type style development to the north would be a huge plus, and I think it would be. I think it would have a positive effect on the neighborhood.
And I would jump on that. I think Morgan's signature sheet here shows that not all, but a considerable number of neighbors think it's a good idea. And why do they think it's a good idea? I don't know. I could conject also, but perhaps it is because they see parts of the neighborhood, particularly along Fashion Place Boulevard, not being the same type of neighbors that have taken extra care of their properties.
Yeah, I agree with Maren in the fact, in one aspect, that I hate taking a single property, and I think we all feel that same way, and that's why we're torn. I mean, I was here when we went through the general plan process. It was a very thorough process, but it's not perfect, and it wasn't. Every property wasn't looked at as an individual property and what we want to do on this, and so things can be missed. You know, I mean, Phil grew up there, and Phil has great Murray wisdom, and I respect his opinion on that. And you know, I do agree again with Travis also. I mean, there may be other properties, but it's a challenge for us because I see that it wouldn't. I don't think it would distract from the neighborhood at all. I think it would actually. Maybe some of these people that signed, again, maybe this is conjecture, but they would sign because they say, well, maybe I could sell my property. Maybe I want to. But again. It's a tough issue for us. We've seen things like this, but I think this one, you know, we've talked about 6230 not ever going through. This one's kind of a unique situation that I would think lends more to an R&B than maybe some other areas. So,
you know, and I do think it would be nice to have additional time to study this for staff. Okay, I will give you that. However, how much time? You guys have already got a full agenda of things lined up. How far out are you? You know, I mean, we've been talking about the car lot ordinance forever, and it's being worked on, and all these other things are being worked on. So if we put this in the queue, yeah, it'll be time for a general plan revision by the time this even comes to the top of the queue to be looked at.
Well, and I mean, obviously, we need to all remember that our role here on this particular one is actually just a recommending body. Right. If Mr. Smith, you know, indeed has spoken with city council and has a majority support on there, they'll make the decision to do what they feel is best regardless. We obviously make recommendations, and I think the notes and the minutes will be sufficient in here to give them a feeling of how we feel about it.
That's what I was going to add. I mean, somebody tells you, something, and you actually read the information, you maybe make a different.
Yep.
You make a different decision. Sure. It's not a guarantee that if they say on the phone, yes, I agree, or I don't agree.
Yep, absolutely.
They don't have all the information.
Right,
yet.
and they've got to hear staff as well.
So we don't know if they're all on board.
They have to talk to staff and study the issue. Absolutely.
Well, from my perspective, Maren couldn't have said it better. I agree pretty much with everything that she said. But I also agree with Scott that when we had the general plan discussion, I don't remember discussing this particular area. And I do remember several areas where we spent a lot of time getting into the nitty-gritty on this. This was not one of them. I do see this as potentially a hard border for that migration of the zone. I think that just looking at it, it makes sense that this could be the southern border of it. Is it time for that to take place? I don't know. I can't speak to the integrity of the neighborhood. I don't know. Are these owners that live in there? Are these renters that live? I don't know that. I don't know if it's time or not. I think short of a motion, we don't know. So unless anyone else has anything else to say, I'd entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I want to make certain that being a member of this board, I'll support whatever decision this board has. Okay, I've enjoyed having the opportunity to voice my feelings tonight. So regardless of the outcome of this tonight, this has been a wonderful process, and I appreciate it. I would like to make a motion to forward a recommendation of approval to the City Council for the requested amendment to the general plan future land use map designation of the property located at 6623 South Fashion Boulevard from low-density residential to residential business, or RNB.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Markham to forward a recommendation of approval to the City Council for the requested amendment to the general plan future land use map designations of the property located at 6623 South Fashion Boulevard from low-density residential to residential business. Do I have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Second by Mr. Hacker. Can we please call for a vote?
Mr. Markham.
Yes.
Mr. Hacker.
Yes.
Ms. Wilson.
Yes.
Ms. Milkavich.
Yes.
Ms. Patterson.
No.
Mr. Woodbury.
Yes.
Mr. May.
Yes. Okay, I need a motion on the zoning map change.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion to forward a recommendation of approval to the City Council for the requested amendment to the zoning map designation of the property located at 6623 South Fashion Boulevard from R18 Single Family Residential to RNB Residential Neighborhood Business.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Markham to forward a recommendation of approval to the City Council for the requested amendment to the zoning map designation for the property located at 6623 South Fashion Boulevard from R18 Single Family Residential to RNB Residential Neighborhood Business. Call for a vote, please.
We need a second. And I'll
excuse me. So
I will
yes.
second it.
Second by Mr. by Mr. Woodbury.
Mr. Markham.
Yes.
Mr. Woodbury.
Yes.
Ms. Patterson.
No.
Ms. Milkavich.
Yes.
Ms. Wilson.
Yes.
Mr. Hacker.
Yes.
Wait.
Mr. Nay has it, and Mr. Nay is going to say no. All right, so both motions move forward to the City Council. So that's it for this evening. Good luck at the City Council. You guys will have obviously another opportunity to have a good long discussion with them, I'm sure. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Staff, anything else for us?
Just a couple of things. We do have, as Mr. Markham alluded to, along with all the things that we have that we're trying to do, like the car lot ordinance, et cetera, we continue to have full agendas. So the November 15th agenda, if any of you had any delusions that would be a nice, slow one, forget it.
I've seen the agenda.
It's already huge. Oh yeah, you've all seen it, I'm sorry. Yeah. So you already know.
I was remaining hopeful, though.
Yeah. Without hope, what have you got? You know.
We don't have Travis. So.
It'll go well.
Let's stay full. We're tentatively planning to just have one meeting in December. We have a scheduled meeting December 20th, but we are going to have a December 6th meeting and no late December meeting. So that one might be full too. So please keep us abreast of your holiday plans and make sure we can keep having a full quorum to take action tonight. Thank you for your discussion tonight. It was fantastic. That's exactly what you're supposed to do, is get all this stuff out and then you make your recommendations. I think you did a great job. This is the Murray Central Station area, small area plan. It's the draft form right now. You were supposed to get copies tonight, but I didn't get them ready. The City Council has copies. They're looking at them now. We haven't got a bunch of feedback from the City Council, so we're hoping to bring this draft to you. We'll put it in your packets for the November 15th meeting. I can email it to you now if you want it electronically, and then we'll bring you paper copies in your packets. So we'll do that tomorrow. We've been working hard on it for a year. It's really fun, good stuff. Some design guidelines for when that area changes, and a lot of really fun information, data-wise in there, and some depressing stuff about ecological and environmental hardships too.
The easy stuff's all been done already, Jared.
It's all about balance is the thing. So we wanted to make you aware of that. We're moving forward with it. If it's in front of you this year, it wouldn't be until December 6th. We're hoping to get it in front of you, but
let's put it in January.
That would be the earliest we would make it, and that may be pushed to January because of the lack of other meetings in December. With that, I will shut up and let you do your thing.
Okay, so just to be clear, Lisa.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, you got the next two meetings.
Yeah, no, 2 meetings. That's
Yes.
right. Whew, no problem.
Okay.
Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Okay.